What's up, wrestling fans? There we go. It is time for another edition of The Voice of Wrestling right here on voiceofwrestling.com and VOWlive.com, which is where you can find the live listening center. I am your host, as always, Chris Cash, joined by Nick Paglino, Nicky Pags, and we've got a lot to discuss tonight, a lot to get to coming off the heels of last night's huge WrestleMania 30 edition. And we want to let you know you can use the hashtag VOWLive tonight during the show to interact with myself and Nick Paglino. So make sure you do that on Twitter to let us know your thoughts on WrestleMania, The Undertaker, everything that we know you're going to want to talk about. Use the hashtag VOWLive to interact with us. We might open the phone lines a little bit later on during the show as well. However, without further delay, let me introduce you, as always, to my right-hand man, Nick Paglino, Nicky Pag, senior editor of WrestleZone.com. Nick, what's going on, man?
What's up, Chris? What's up, wrestling fans? Well, I said John Cena was going to win.
You were right about that.
I got that right.
I'm curious.
So, I mean, if you forget about everything else, I did pretty good.
You did really, really well. If
the WrestleMania was only 16 minutes long, I did really well.
That's why you don't do the odds thing for. I saw a tweet. I saw a deal. Fox Sports or something.com put out a recent deal, and I actually just got off the phone with the guy of their PR department of I think it's called Bovada. I've never heard of them, but they
that was the online betting
the
site,
online
right?
betting
or the odds site.
Yeah, I got in touch with somebody literally minutes before we went on the air about that, and hopefully here in a little bit for WrestleZone.com and VoiceOfWrestling.com, I will have an update to that story about just how much they lost and some things like that on, of course, The Undertaker losing last night, which is what is on a lot of people's mind. But there were some other things that obviously came out of WrestleMania last night, so I'm very, very much looking forward to tonight's show. Obviously, a lot to cover, Nick. But first and foremost, do want to shout out to our sponsor at barbershopwindow.com. We are actually in the process of working out some Voice of Wrestling shirts as well that we will release details in the very near future for Voice of Wrestling. So keep an eye out for that. However, go shop all the other amazing shirts that they have at barbershopwindow.com. You can use the discount code VOW for 10% off. Definitely recommend you do that. Hey, speaking of shirts, Nick, is my shirt like weird looking? It looks weird to me. It's like,
well, when you do this with your hands like this and you go like this and you demonstrate and start pulling, then yeah, it looks weird. Well, I mean, it's weird, but it's off-putting. You know what I mean?
When you do that.
Yeah, I mean, all right, that's enough.
I don't know. It just looks weird to me. It looks like it's some sort of.
Well, put it on. I can't see. I'm seeing both of us right now.
One of those like what's those things called? No, it's not an iron. I could use maybe one of those. So let's get off of my shirt and let's talk about. Let's get off the shirt. Let's get right into what everybody's talking about, and that is, of course. That's of course The Undertaker, Nick, and I think the big thing when we talk about The Undertaker and what transpired last night, first and foremost is the immediate reaction, which is what
sure.
And it was really crazy. I thought I was laughing hysterically. You never call me during a wrestling event anymore, and you called me last night as soon as this happened because
I thought I was having problems with the WWE network.
Right. We both talked about the possibility of it being hijacked by somebody.
Right.
I think it was crazy. Of course, we have found out now, WWE, before we went on the air, WWE has confirmed The Undertaker did suffer a concussion, a serious concussion. But do we know when it happened in the match, Nick?
Well, we don't. And the original, the earlier reports were suggesting that it did happen early on in the match. And I had an opportunity today to go back and re-watch the match after, all of this information surfaced. And honestly, I think it happened early on in the match because if you go back and you watch, you can see several spots. There's a German suplex spot where Lesnar's hitting him with a couple of Germans. And then if you remember, there's those spots where Undertaker has Lesnar in the triangle choke, and Lesnar is hoisting him up in the air and dropping him down on his back. Right. He does this twice. I remember the first time it looked horrible, as did 75% of what happened in that match. But if you go back, having known now that he suffered some type of concussion or head or neck injury, you can really see that both him and Brock Lesnar are protecting the back of Undertaker's heads. Those German suplexes land very gingerly on Undertaker's back. His head never hits the mat. Which is oftentimes, 99.9% of the time, the back of your head's always going to hit the mat on a German. And when he drops him after hoisting him up from those triangle chokes, he also drops him on his back and gently to avoid hitting his head. So, Chris, like you said right at the top of the show, there was the initial reaction to this. But the problem is we have to curb the initial reaction now. And we have to move on from the initial reaction because of what we know. And, everybody a lot of people disliked the match. I didn't like the match. We've talked about this off the air. Every year, how many years now? 6, 7 years, Undertaker steals the show every year at WrestleMania. He has the match of the year every single year. This year, that was probably the worst match on the card, by far. And it was a terrible performance. But now we see what's happened. So we now know that he was very likely injured in the onset or the early stages of that match, and he really couldn't give it 100%. So we have to get past that initial reaction, and we have to deal with, I believe, and this is the question that I want to ask you, what happens next? And, if the reports are in fact true that the Undertaker asked for this, he wanted Brock Lesnar to end the streak. Reports are suggesting he wanted that back in 2010, going back 4 years ago. He had his eye set on Brock Lesnar to be the guy that ends the streak. So it happens last night. That was the original plan all along. It wasn't an audible that was called in the middle of the match. This was something that Undertaker decided to do. Chris, my question now, heading into Raw tonight, is must The Undertaker retire on Raw tonight? Is there anything left for him to do other than retire tonight on Raw?
I expect a retirement announcement. I don't know that he is retiring. Here's the problem with the idea that Frank brought up on last night's reaction show, and the fact that Sting is a lock for a return tonight, or a debut, I guess, tonight, and that Sting and Undertaker is all but guaranteed for next year. I don't know that WWE is willing or able to commit. Undertaker is obviously coming off this injury now. I don't know that they're willing to commit to a 1 year in advance buildup, which I think was probably an original plan. I do know this much coming out of last night's deal, at least in my mind. I think there's absolutely no doubt that last night or next year's WrestleMania is 100% the last year for The Undertaker. It will be his last match, either next year or last night's could have been. I do think that we know Sting wants to wrestle The Undertaker. One match, one and done, would be fine with Sting. He would be 100% okay with that. He would be 100% okay with losing to The Undertaker, which I think would be a little bit better swan song than the reaction and what we got after last night. Plus, I don't think he was happy with, obviously, the match. Depending on when the concussion happened, is at least in my mind, whether or not anybody should have any ill will towards the match. I agree with you. I think that after hearing about the concussion and not knowing the details of when that took place, that makes a lot of sense, because I could not believe that the match was as slow-paced and as not physical as I was expecting it to be. I can forgive that because the ending saved it in a sense that that's all we're going to be talking about, not so much what happened in the match. That being said, I do think The Undertaker is probably going to be very, very hesitant to do next year's match now. If that was the plan all along, I think that the concussion probably changed that. So I do think that we'll get some sort of follow-up and some sort of answers tonight as far as what WWE has in store for them. But Nick, I guess my question to you real quick is Sting, is Sting versus The Undertaker after the streak has been broken, is it now as appealing as it once was while The Undertaker's streak was intact? I mean, I know the streak was not going to be a big deal at that point, but I think prior to last night, Nick, I think a lot of people still thought The Undertaker may have 2, maybe 3 more years left at WrestleMania. Nobody thinks that anymore from what I gauge and what I can tell. So is Sting and The Undertaker really even worth it now?
That, Chris, is the exact comment that I was going to is the exact comment / question that I was going to ask you while you were just talking. I think all The Undertaker had left to offer in WWE is the streak. And the possibility of the streak ending and the question of who would be the guy to end it. You know, every year when they build to an Undertaker match at WrestleMania, it's typically the same story over and over again in one particular sense. And that is The Undertaker has faced, this superstar and that superstar, and he's gone up against top guys, but he's never faced anyone like Mark Henry. And Mark Henry is going to be the guy that ends the streak. He's faced everybody that he could possibly be, but he's never faced anyone like the Big Show, and the Big Show is going to end the streak. He's faced everybody, but he's never faced Mr. WrestleMania, Shawn Michaels. Shawn Michaels on the streak, and this year was no different. He's faced absolutely everybody he can, but he's never faced the Beast incarnate, Brock Lesnar at WrestleMania, streak on the line. So if he had won last night, you continue that storyline. Sting comes in and Sting says, you've faced the best that WWE has to offer, but I'm not WWE. I'm WCW. I'm a different ilk. Maybe he doesn't mention WCW specifically, but I'm somebody else. I'm new. I've never been here before. I'm the icon Sting. I've been around a lot longer than Big Show and Brock Lesnar and CM Punk and Mark Henry. I'm old school. I'm Ric Flair. I'm the guy that you have to beat. That whole storyline is non-existent now. And honestly, to me, and I hate to say this because it saddens me as an Undertaker, as someone who has seen every single Undertaker WrestleMania. I've been alive for all of them. I've anticipated all of them. The match now becomes 2 old guys in the ring fighting for what? I don't really know. Now, that's not to say that there isn't value or potential money in Sting versus The Undertaker. But to me, looking at The Undertaker last night, seeing the shape that he looked going into the pay-per-view last night, how old, his age is really showing now in his face, in his physique. Because the streak is over, I think you can find a better opponent for Sting in WWE. Let's face it, Sting's 56 years old, but he looks a hell of a lot better than The Undertaker, and I guess that's just genes, that's just the honest truth. I think there's someone better that Sting could go after in WWE. So honestly, Chris, I'm conflicted. Could Sting Undertaker happen? Sure. But to answer your original question, is it as intriguing now that the streak is over? Absolutely not.
And I don't know. I think that the fact that most people now are very, very puzzled by last night with The Undertaker losing, it was such a shocking moment. I think the fans would embrace one more match. Plus, because the match, as you and I both agree, and most people would agree, 75% of it just wasn't what we're used to. I think fans would enjoy it and appreciate it, especially if they know that it's The Undertaker's last match, which I think would be announced. So you're experiencing and witnessing history, whereas they get to sell that by itself. Undertaker's retirement match, they get to sell that one more match. Plus Sting, they get to sell a double retirement match, which Frank brought up as well, if they want to go that route. Unless, of course, Sting is going to work more than just the Taker match, if that's still on the table. Let me also just say with the critics of why Brock. Nobody, I would imagine, including WWE Creative, including Hunter, including Vince, would script, if they had it their way, Brock Lesnar to beat The Undertaker. I do feel like you get more money now out of Brock Lesnar for as long as he's around, even as a part-time guy, than you did before yesterday and before last night. But I think there are 5 other people that anybody and their mother would agree was a better choice to beat the streak if it was going to happen. I've said this all along, Nick. I said it last night. I've always been of the mindset that the streak should end. I've always felt that. I've never thought it made any sense, despite what so many people felt was the right thing to do for The Undertaker and his legacy. To me in pro wrestling, that's the biggest investment Vince ever has and ever will likely have again. Why not cash in on that when Undertaker's about to hang it up? The streak really means nothing 5 years from now, but it could mean something for the guy that beats him. It won't with Brock Lesnar. So that's the disappointing part, but the thing you have to realize is that was Undertaker's decision. That was Undertaker's decision and his alone. And as you mentioned, Nick, we've been talking for 3 years. Brock was the guy that Taker wanted for a long time, apparently. So we have to live with that. And WWE has to live with that. And they've got a big buzz circulating around WWE right now that they did not have before yesterday. But we move on to obviously the other big thing that came out of last night, and that is exactly what we wanted to happen, what was predictable about WrestleMania 30, but yet still the right way to go, and that's Daniel Bryan. And the first thing, as we segue into that, Nick, a lot of people have asked, and I've got to agree that I understand where the complaints come to an extent. Undertaker losing the streak, to me, certainly did pull away from Daniel Bryan and his big night last night and what was supposed to be his shining moment. Now the final moments of WrestleMania 30 still were all for Daniel Bryan, and it was still an incredible sight to see. It was warm. It was amazing. It was just a great way to end the night. But Undertaker is what people are talking about today. For the most part, I believe The Undertaker is what people are talking about. So there's no doubt. But let me ask you this, Nick. Knowing that it was The Undertaker's decision to do this, Vince had to go along with it and just ride that wave as far as the streak. Do you think there's any intent? Do you think it was deliberate that they did this with Daniel Bryan on his big night? Because that is what people are talking about now. And
sure.
And maybe again, Undertaker made this decision. He wanted this, so it was really out of their hands. But man, that's sure a convenient thing to happen for a guy that, again, I don't know that if it wasn't for the internet wrestling fans and just the WWE universe in general fighting for Daniel Bryan as hard as they did, that last night would have happened the way it did for him specifically, because I don't think they really wanted him there, at least not right now. And so how convenient is that the Undertaker really does kind of steal his thunder? But overall, Nick, how do you feel as far as the Taker and the streak ending to how it affected Daniel Bryan?
Well, I mean, I can understand it. You know, I know that there were those the conspiracy theories are there. Of course, there's the conspiracy theory that Brock Lesnar defeated The Undertaker, and that's a shot at CM Punk. You know, you couldn't do it last year. You didn't do it last year. So we'll have Brock Lesnar do it this year. Of course, those theories are going to come up, and there is no doubt. You know, we've seen the footage of the fans. We've posted pictures of the fans. Josh Eisenberg, if you check out his review of WrestleMania last night, he was there. You know, we're getting nothing but reports from people who were at the show just talking about and reiterating how stunned into silence the crowd really was. And you could hear it. I mean, go back, if you've got the replay of WrestleMania, go back and watch the intros for the main event. You know, when the 3 guys are in the ring and they're doing the ring introductions, I mean, the crowd is barely audible. You know, they're still reeling from this. However, you could look at the bright side of things. You could look at the positive side of things, and you could say, but Daniel Bryan got him back. And that match got him back. And, you know, that's something else, obviously, when we talk a little bit more about that match specifically. Kudos to Randy Orton, Batista, and Daniel Bryan for following that and for really putting together one hell of a triple threat match. This is a great match, you know, and getting that crowd back involved after we really had the wind stolen from our sails with the Undertaker loss. But Sure, Chris. I know people's minds are going to go there with, this idea of did they do it to kind of rain on Daniel Bryan's parade? Look, Daniel Bryan had a great night last night. He's going to have what I hope it will be, a good title run. He's going to come out tonight and celebrate. He's going to have many more moments with the title and to be able to celebrate in front of the fans. I guess the only thing that sort of irks my brain is if they've known, let's say they've known since 2010 that Brock Lesnar is the guy that Undertaker has handpicked to end the streak. Why couldn't they do it next year? Why couldn't they have Taker defeat Lesnar this year? And much like they did with Triple H, Michaels, right? He faced twice in a row.
Well,
Michaels,
and Triple H.
And Triple H, right. But, much like they did with those guys, he comes back next year and he can't sleep at night. He has to face him one more time. And then he beats him and ends the streak next year.
I guess because I don't know. Number one, that's too big of a risk. If he knew that he wanted, that's too big of a risk to.
If he knew, if he knew he wanted it over tonight.
I think.
Or last night, if he knew he wanted it done last night.
I really think. Every year is one of those things. We're probably in a 2 to 3 months before, or around the end of the year. Every year is probably in the last 4 or 5 years for Undertaker. How do you feel? How do you feel? Can you go? It's very rare to me that I can't imagine the Undertaker knows one full calendar year whether or not he's going to be ready for the next year with his health issues. And we've reported several times in the past couple of years, Nick, I know, that the Undertaker's health is a lot worse than what most people are even aware and what he'll let on. So to me, I just don't think they could risk that. Plus, there were other people that they wanted to work with The Undertaker, most likely, in his final 2 or 3 matches at WrestleMania. John Cena was a guy that I think everybody expected. Of course, Sting is a guy that's been rumored and talked about for many, many, many months. A couple of years even, I think, the Sting talk as far as, for several years, really, as far as Sting coming back and then who he would work, and Undertaker was always in those discussions. So for me, I think it was 1 year and one year only for Undertaker and Brock Lesnar. But as far as Daniel Bryan, I 100% agree with you. I think that last night was an incredible night for him. But here's the big thing for me now, Nick. And I brought this up last night, and I've got to get your thoughts on this. Where do we go with Daniel Bryan? The chase is over. The underdog story that they sold was as good as any has ever been. It was an incredible story that ended exactly the way that it should. It culminated at WrestleMania 30 last night, and Daniel Bryan is on top of the world. That fad, it might not be a fad, but I'm curious to your thoughts on whether you think it could be. Because now, how are the fans going to treat Daniel Bryan? They're still going to chant yes. They're still going to support him. But how hardcore are they going to support him? And is it going to be enough to sustain his time on top? Because that's what you and I have talked about. I think we talked about that with Kevin Kelly several weeks ago, Nick. How do fans treat Daniel Bryan now that the underdog story is no longer really in the equation? Because I don't think that it transitions well from a good underdog story. He finally makes it to the top and then becomes the underdog again. Now, they sold it with Rocky over and over and over again, but that's not weekly episodic TV. This is a lot different ballgame than sequels to movies. This to me is a completely different thing, apples to oranges. I think with the episodic program, the as champion, the underdog thing doesn't sell very well. And obviously with Brock Lesnar now probably moving into the title picture at some point relatively soon. Jim Ross made a guess, which I tend to believe is probably going to be true. Brock Lesnar will be champion by next year's WrestleMania. So what do they do between now and then? And then, Nick, my question to you is how strong will this support for Daniel Bryan last now that the fans got their way, they got their wishes, and he's the new champion?
I think it's going to last for a while. I mean, it's not like this was, look, there are fads you could maybe call fandangoing a fad. You could have called the woo 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 with Zack Ryder a fad. We've talked about this, Chris. You've maintained many times that all right, people were into Zack Ryder, they were into the chant, and they liked the character. But at the end of the day, was Zack Ryder that talented? Did he really deserve the spot that people wanted to see him in? I think Daniel Bryan has proven that he deserves the spot that he's in. He is that good. He's a good character. He's a great in-ring wrestler. So I think this momentum is going to carry him for a while. It all depends, though, on how much WWE wants to give it to him. Is Triple H going to step aside now, or will he continue to be a factor in this equation? I think he has to be. Because if he's if they're portraying Triple H and Stephanie as the two people that are making the decisions. I mean, look at the role that Brad Maddox has played on Raw in the past 8-9 months. I mean, he's not even there. Yep. I mean, you forget he's the Raw general manager. This is the guy making the decisions. No, it all seems and sounds like it's Triple H and Stephanie. Right. So they can't go away tonight. There's no way they can't go away next week. They can't go away the week later. Who's going to run the show? So are they going to still be involved in this? And, is this going to be a situation like Rey Mysterio? If they continue to play up that he's the underdog and he's the small guy and he didn't deserve it and he didn't earn it, then they're going to crush this. And the audience is going to get tired of watching it after a while. But I think if last night was any indication, I don't really see them going in that route. I mean, it was not a fluke that Daniel Bryan won last night. He cleanly defeated Triple H. He made Batista tap out.
That was great,
and they threw everything that they could
at him.
Everything
they could give him.
And he cleanly won those matches, and he cleanly won the title. So I think they're behind him a lot more than people, want to give him credit for. And again, I understand people's hesitancy to give them credit because Daniel Bryan didn't necessarily get there because this was the plan all along. Mark Madden said it great in an article when he said, Daniel Bryan's got a lot of thank you notes to write. It took a lot of things to happen that were out of Daniel Bryan's control for him to get where he's at right now. CM Punk leaving, Batista not getting over the way they wanted him to. But where do they go from here? I think they're going to continue with this, and I think it does have lasting power. My guess is going to be we see Batista versus Daniel Bryan, at least for the short term, before we get into Brock Lesnar.
Well, Randy Orton didn't lose the time. Randy Orton didn't get pinned. So, I think that probably happens tonight. We need a big show. A big title match could very, very I could expect it tonight. Randy Orton versus Daniel Bryan, maybe one-on-one, just so they can save Batista, which I think is a very natural fit. I think Batista is a very good fit for a couple of months for Daniel Bryan because there's already that chemistry there. There's already plenty of stuff to go off of in terms of Batista promo, everything like that. I believe Batista is a better fit than even Randy Orton is. I think Randy Orton moves out of the title picture very quickly, and I think tonight could be that night as soon as it's over because I think he probably wrestles. Maybe Batista's involved, but I think Randy Orton gets his rematch tonight. I don't think they even drag it out to the next pay-per-view. I really don't. I don't think they want Randy Orton there. I think there's better chemistry, like I said, with Batista. And then I think a few months from now, we get Brock Lesnar in the picture, and he's very, very possible, or possibly the guy that's going to beat Daniel Bryan at some point in the future, and maybe they try to get a good final run, or at least a good run, whether it's his final one or not, out of him as much as they can. So I think that was good. But, Nick, a couple other things. We'll obviously come back to the Daniel Bryan. I believe Mike Killum is going to call in here in 10 minutes or so for about 5 minutes to give us some of his thoughts on last night's show. Nick, one of the things that I did want to bring up was Bray Wyatt and John Cena. You were right as far as John Cena winning. I thought there was a good possibility that Bray Wyatt could win, but it wasn't something that he needed. He was spectacular in that match, as was John Cena. That match was very, very good. I thought, for my taste, I enjoyed it even better than I did Triple H Daniel Bryan in the opener. I got a lot of heat for that on Twitter. A lot of people, which I understand. Triple H and Daniel Bryan opened it up, which was amazing. I think the entrances alone really helped those two matches set the tone very, very well at the very beginning. The entrances were phenomenal. Triple H's entrance was incredible. Bray Wyatt's was very, very good as well. But Bray Wyatt and John Cena did exactly what they needed to do in that match, and they told just one hell of a story. And it wasn't a story. A lot of people talking about John Cena in a heel turn. Again, I think get off of that, please, very quickly. I don't think that's anything that's going to ever happen anytime soon anyway. I think that what they did was they tried to sell that just for a minute. For that one match, they tried to sell John Cena losing his mind and of course, Bray Wyatt getting in his head. It was such a good told match, and I'm not one that really looks at that. Am I entertained by the match or am I not? But that was one of them that you could tell. And Daniel Bryan and Triple H was much the same way. But I'm curious, Nick, to your taste. Which match did you prefer last night as far as the match of the night that so many people were kind of, obviously it wasn't Undertaker last night, which is new for us with WrestleMania. So which one do you give match of the night to? I would assume those two would be the nominees for you as well. And then obviously after you give us your pick, what did you think of Bray Wyatt and John Cena's performance in general?
Honestly, match of the night for me was the triple threat. And it was for a few reasons. One being they put on a hell of a match. It was very physical. The powerbomb RKO through the table was one of the most insane spots I've seen in as long as I can remember. And they had that added pressure of having to follow the Undertaker Lesnar match and bring that crowd back to life. So that was the match of the night for me. And I would say a close second was Bray Wyatt, John Cena. The storytelling in that match was just phenomenal. As you said, I couldn't agree more completely. Bray's character work in the match, unbelievable. What he was trying to bring out of John Cena and what he then did, that was the tragic flaw in Bray Wyatt's method of thinking,
right.
His psychology. And it's brilliant, because at the end of the day, the heel is supposed to lose. The baby face is supposed to be better and smarter than the heel. And in this case, what we're seeing is this genius in Bray Wyatt, but the tactic came up and bit him in the ass, because he awoke the giant, which is what he was provoking, but I think he was trying to do it to possibly get John Cena disqualified, but he didn't do it. He ended up bringing out that powerhouse and that beast within John Cena, and that's brilliant booking too, because the audience knows John Cena has that strength, and he knows he has that power. He just doesn't often go there, So it was just wonderfully booked from a psychological standpoint. The wrestling was on point. It was excellent. And so I don't take anything away from that, but they didn't have the chore of taking 75,000 people and have to throw cold water on them and say, wake up. Yeah, The Undertaker lost. Get over it. Now you got to watch us. That was what the triple threat had to do, and I thought they did a damn good job, and all three of them really sort of earned the reaction that they finally got out of the crowd.
No, I thought it was good. I'm kind of curious now what they do with John Cena, obviously, and what they want to do with him going forward, because I think, the reports of John Cena, Daniel Bryan being the number one, number two guy in the company, I think makes a lot of sense, obviously, going forward. You're going to have some part-time guys, though, with Brock Lesnar, of course, Batista, although he's more of a full-time guy, at least during this particular contract, so it seems. I think you've got those guys in the mix as well. Randy Orton, like I said, probably takes a back seat. Maybe he works with Randy Orton at some point out of the title picture if they get to there. if Brock Lesnar obviously is the guy they ultimately want to go to with Daniel Bryan. But I think Bray Wyatt, just like you said, that backbend spider crawl thing was incredible. I have to make mention of that. I thought it was very, very good. And as you mentioned too, I think the triple threat was very, very good, especially coming off of out of that Undertaker match and of course the Divas match. I think that they did an exceptional job and very, very, very good spots in that. Much better than I imagined or anticipated, especially with it being a triple threat. Those were always very hard to book, but it was very, very good. The other thing that I really wanted to mention tonight, outside of really quick aside in the opener of WrestleMania 30, was very, very good. I thought The Rock, John Cena, and Hulk Hogan in one ring is just exactly what WrestleMania is about. It's about moments. It's about memories that are going to last forever. That's one that will, for many wrestling fans, including myself. The Rock was incredible on the mic like he always is. Hulk and Steve got through the blunders and recovered well, so I thought that was good. And it was good. It was good material for the rest of the night with the whole Superdome and what was the actual reference? The Silverdome and yeah. So I thought it was really good, the opener. The other thing was our both of our predictions. I did officially change my pick though right before the match because I kind of assumed it would be anybody but Big Show going into the match. I didn't know who. I have no idea where Alexander Rusev or whatever was. I really kind of expected him. And I don't even know, Nick, that Cesaro wasn't announced for the match prior to last.
He was not. No.
That was a last-minute change, you could tell.
Yeah, there was. Yeah, it had to have been, or it was just a swerve, done intentionally, kind of keep him out of the match, so that it could have been the plans, could have been all along to have Cesaro win, but they decided we're not going to announce him, so he's really not that favorite. We're really going to push Big Show, we're going to push Sheamus, and interestingly, there were 3 spots remaining in that match when WrestleMania started, and there actually ended up being 31 guys in the bout, which is interesting. Kofi Kingston, was that the best one yet?
I think so. I mean, it was awesome.
This guy is just,
there is so little room for error with that, with what he just did. I think that it was like absolutely crazy what they did with him. And I think, I believe that was one of the best ones. Maybe, I don't know if it's the best one. I don't know if it was the best one yet, Nick, but I would absolutely say it was one of the best ones.
Man, I think it was the best. I mean, granted, they're all unbelievably difficult to pull off, but I mean this one, my God, he flies out of the ring. I mean his feet, it was just unbelievable. I mean there was just room for me there just seemed like there was so much that could have gone wrong with that, that didn't. In fact, I didn't even, a lot of times when Kofi's in any kind of a battle royal or the Royal Rumble, you can see the spot coming. It's like, all right, there's sort of maybe like a setup, where, all right, this is going to be where Kofi does his amazing feat. But last night, it didn't even dawn on me until he was out. He was laying there, and I was like, oh, he's out. And then I said, wait a minute, so it was really, the whole spot was unbelievable. And, I'm looking in the chat room right now, and, Y2 Jazz in the chat room is saying it as amazing as it was, it is sad that he's going to be stuck doing spots like that for the rest of his career. That's what Kofi Kingston is. I
don't look at it that way. I don't look at it as sad. I think they've tried with Kofi. They never gave him a chance. But that is what keeps him relevant. That is what keeps him in people's mind and keeps him interesting at a WrestleMania, whereas otherwise he's not. I think so. Every year, at least that gives him a place on the card that is better than the other B, C plus guys that don't have any type of role or things that people are looking forward to, or just being shoved in the match just to get them on the card. So I was there. But as far as Cesaro is concerned, I just look at it from a standpoint of I'm glad about the fact that they gave it to somebody that could actually use this win to help elevate their career. But then I also am a little hesitant to believe it's going to do amazing things for him, because I look at the landscape in WWE right now, and there's not a lot of room at the top, obviously. We know that that's kind of fixed right now. That Daniel Bryan, Orton maybe for a minute longer, Batista, Brock Lesnar, John Cena are all ahead of the guys like Cesaro, a guy like Bray Wyatt, The Shield, which lost in very quick fashion last night.
No, they won.
I mean, they won in very quick fashion last night, which, by the way, I have heard Billy Gunn's injury is not serious. I do think that he was hurt, but I don't think it's serious. And I think that was probably a way to write them off TV, most likely. I think they're probably done. Otherwise, I think they would have been in the tag match last night, the title match. So I think New Age Outlaws are probably done, which is bittersweet for me, but it's great that they had that final run. And I just look at the landscape, and a guy like Cesaro, Nick, I don't know where he could be, but I am very excited about the mid-card right now. I think the WWE mid-card is really, really good. I'm a little concerned about the tag team division, though, and what happens with the Usos, because obviously without the Real Americans, there's very little to be excited about with the tag team division, but we'll obviously take that day by day as well. So I thought that last night was very good in a lot of ways, and I think Cesaro can use this. I don't know if I want the actual Andre the Giant Battle Royal Memorial to be an every year thing. I liked it last night. I think it was good. I don't know that's the match that I want to stick around every year. It was really sluggish at the beginning. With all of them starting, it's not the Royal Rumble. You can't make it the Royal Rumble. It takes away from the Rumble if you do that. And with all 30 guys, or as you mentioned, Nick, 31 guys in the middle of the ring, it's very, very hard for them to do much. So you really are, the first 5, 6, 7 minutes of that match is like, let's clear as many of these guys as we can to give us some space. So I'm not a big fan of just the match in general, but it was good for what it was this one year. So we'll see if that's going to be a staple or something on a regular basis. However, real quickly, do want to bring on a special guest. Mike Killum of WrestleZone.com joins us now to talk his thoughts on, obviously, the streak. One question that I wanted to ask both of you guys real quick, and as we bring Mike Killum onto the show, Mike, welcome to the Voice of Wrestling. Thanks for joining us again. The Undertaker, going back to that for a minute, obviously shocking. Nobody expected it, but is it the biggest of all time? I'm curious to what both of you guys think. And Mike, we'll start with you. Your thoughts on the Undertaker streak streak being ended. Do you think it was the biggest shocker of all time in pro wrestling, that at least in your mind?
It is the biggest scripted moment in pro wrestling. There are only 3 times in my memory, and I've been watching wrestling for 17 years. That's less than some, but more than most these days. There's 3 times where I can legitimately remember my jaw dropping, and not in like a dancing around, this is so awesome kind of way, but like I literally don't believe what I just saw kind of way. The first was when Hogan joined the NWO.
Yep.
The second was when I woke up and found out that Eddie Guerrero had died. And the third was last night. And I know because I talked to Nick immediately after it happened, because we were trying to figure something out for the site, and both of us were just like, I don't even know how to complete sentences.
Well, it's hard for me to include the Eddie Guerrero thing in there because that's not a scripted moment.
That's why I said it's the biggest non-scripted moment for me as a wrestling fan.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of those that you could throw in there as far as those kind of outside the ring shockers that took place, whether it's Benoit or whatever it might be. But I think Hogan's the only one that probably comes close.
Absolutely.
As far as a bigger shocker, and I think this surpasses that. Even I just think as far as a moment that nobody would have ever anticipated, Hogan was up there obviously as well, but this one kind of takes the cake. I think it was the reaction was incredible. The facials that
Well,
they got was amazing, Nick.
You know, and I think that's gotta be, you know, in addition to, you know, and again, we're never gonna know the reason why the Undertaker chose Brock Lesnar as the guy that ends the streak, but you know, the reaction that took place last night. And I know at the time, prior to us knowing that the Undertaker made this decision, the Undertaker was actually injured in the match. You know, before I knew any of that, I thought to myself, this is shit, because WWE is doing this just to shock all of us. Because of anyone that we thought, you know, all of the guys that have faced the Undertaker in the past few years, Triple H's, the Michaels, the CM Punks, we all thought the Undertaker's going to win, but there's that shadow of doubt there that maybe he'll lose. Well, with Brock Lesnar, with the terrible build to the pay-per-view, with the lack of creativity, the part-time schedule they had, it was a 103.5% lock, like we said last week, that the Undertaker wins this match. Mm-hmm. So just based on that, WWE knows they're going to elicit that kind of a response from the crowd, and I was upset about that at first, because I said, don't do this. Don't end the streak just to shock the crowd. Do it for another reason beyond just creating silence, you know, for 15 minutes. There's got to be, you got to do something more. You got to tell a better story. There has to be a future for this beyond just shock and awe, you know. And now, of course, we know that there's more to the story here than just that. But I'll tell you what, if it was Undertaker that really chose Brock Lesnar, maybe that's the reason why he chose him, because he said nobody is going to expect Brock Lesnar is going to beat me this year, so Brock Lesnar is going to be the guy that does it.
Mike, your overall thoughts, though? I mean, what were some of the highlights that stuck out for you last night? What did you think of WrestleMania 30 and kind of how it ranks up with previous WrestleManias?
Well, people that were there have been calling it the greatest WrestleMania of all time, and I'm not ready to jump to that yet, because I think there's a lot of WrestleManias in contention. There certainly wasn't there was a lot of good matches. There wasn't a single match that I thought beat a Shawn versus Stone Cold, or a Brett versus Shawn kind of match, or Shawn versus Taker kind of match, but there were 2, 3, maybe even 4 really, really good matches, and the main event was, you know, probably definitely the best match of the night. I loved the intro with the Hogan, Rock, and Austin. I think that was a great callback to say, you know, this is right now we're honoring everyone that came before, and then the rest of the night we're going to focus on the future. And I haven't heard anyone online or on the show or anyone mention this yet, but to a lot of people, Cena being Wyatt was kind of a disappointment, because they thought this was going to be Wyatt's big breakthrough, beating a guy like John Cena. But to me, if you look at the rest of the card, you have Cesaro going over in a really meaningful way in the Battle Royal. In 2 different matches, you have Daniel Bryan going over in a huge way. So to me, Cena, and he said this in a promo weeks ago, and it really caught my ear rather. He said, you know, it's the dawning of a new era, but everyone that wants to make it to the top to be that guy is going to have to go through him. And I thought his win last night wasn't just another win. I thought it was almost an emphatic statement that says, we are moving into a new era, but I'm not going anywhere. And I thought that was extremely important.
I think that's a really good point. And I think that one thing that I could tell, and one thing that I've noticed for a while now is that it seems as if the fans are desperately longing for something new. And the fresh faces that we've seen rise, a guy like Bray Wyatt has his time to shine. Last night really wasn't the time, and I'm okay with that. I'm at peace with that, because I know, you know, Triple H seems to be hell-bent and you know, hell-bound when it comes to setting up the future. The facilities that they have now for NXT and the development program is by far better than it's ever been for WWE. And I think that's what they're looking to do. And I think that it's something to be excited for when you look at guys like The Shield and Bray Wyatt and Cesaro and, of course, Daniel Bryan. And I think that's the key. I think that's the key. And when you see that, and with last night, with the way they were doing it, and now last night was kind of the start to me, because it's the first time I've really noticed it in such a collective, cohesive way, with Bray Wyatt sing-along now, which is going to be The Whole World in His Hands being sung and the swaying back and forth for Follow the Buzzards. That's the stuff that is picking up these days, and so I think WWE will start focusing on finding those things for certain stars that they want to elevate, and I think Bray Wyatt has that going for him that could be built on, but some of those come and go a little bit. Fandango had it as well, but that's kind of past, and it'll come back in spurts, but it doesn't stick around as much as Yes does, as much as The Rock's chance did, as much as What does, or Flair's Woo. But those are the things that I think WWE is going to start picking up on. Mike, before we let you go, though, overall, what did you think as far as Daniel Bryan's night last night? And on top of that, his future, which I think is as important, if not more important, than the build to last night. And, of course, his actual wins and winning the big one. I think his future is equally as important as that story that was told. What did you think of his night last night? And, of course, quickly his future as well.
Man, he's got a lot of people to thank. Either there's, like you guys were talking about, he wouldn't have been in that match had not all of the pieces lined up perfectly. And part of me kind of hopes that Punk realized that, when he stepped aside, but maybe not. But I thought both matches are great. The second one was better than the first, but they were both way above average. The second one was incredible, and I think you have to give a nod to both Orton and Batista because they were a big part of that. And especially to Batista, he's getting better and better and better, and that ring rust is slowly falling off. So I think you do need to give him a nod, as much as people won't like it. But I'm hesitant. I thought Bryan was going to be big when he beat Cena clean at SummerSlam last year, but time will tell, I guess. I think it's going to be a really eventful summer, and I think the last thing I wanted to say real quick, not even just a short tidbit. My favorite subtle moment from WrestleMania last night, and if go look at the Andre the Giant Battle Memorial, whatever. Look at the outfit that Big Show was wearing. We haven't seen him wear that in like a decade. That was his original single strap Andre the Giant. And so in that moment when Cesaro slammed him, it literally looks identical to the moment that Hogan slammed Andre at WrestleMania 3. And I thought that was just a really cool, subtle shout out.
Yeah, no.
To that moment.
It was perfect. It was the perfect way to book the end of that match.
Mike, as always, Mike Killum from WrestleZone.com. Thanks for joining us, man.
Yep, thanks. Take it easy.
Mike Killum, by the way, guys, for those that don't know, will be joining my Pro Wrestling Mastermind group on voiceofwrestling.com/mastermind for all the details. You can still sign up for that as well. There still are some spots open. He'll be coming on to critique your work if you already have a project going. But I basically teach you all that you need to know when it comes to starting your own pro wrestling blog, show, whatever it might be. So check that out at voiceofwrestling.com/mastermind if you're interested. Like I said, Mike will be coming on there. Guys, we're going to open up the phone lines a little bit just for a couple of minutes as well as we wrap up here. Might take a couple of quick phone calls, so call into the show at 323-300-5350 and be very, very short with your so we try to get to a couple of them. Just your quick thoughts on WrestleMania 30 last night. 323-300-5350. Nick, where does this rank in your mind? I mean, if you can give me that as far as WrestleMania 30 in the grand scheme of things, in 30 years of WrestleMania, where does it rank? Is it definitely top 5 for you?
Well, these are going to be – it's tough to say right off the bat because, we look back at WrestleMania. When WrestleMania 3 was over, I didn't go home that night and say this is the best WrestleMania I've ever seen. Now, there had only been 2 before that. When WrestleMania 6 was over, I didn't say that was the best WrestleMania I've ever seen. It's years later that these memories carry with you. I think WWE created some historic memories last night. And they say that after every show they do, It's been a historic night on Raw. Every Raw is a historic night. Every SmackDown's a historic night. Every episode of, whatever YouTube show they do is a historic episode,
Right.
They throw those terms around too much. Last night was, without a doubt, for better or for worse. If you liked it or if you didn't, I'm sure people were sobbing when Hulk Hogan didn't beat the Ultimate Warrior. I'm sure people were throwing beers at each other when Andre the Giant didn't beat Hulk Hogan. They created truly historic moments last night, and they did them well. Daniel Bryan with the yes movement, the Undertaker's the longest running storyline in professional wrestling. 21 WrestleManias, 22 WrestleManias in the making for the streak. Cesaro recreating that, but not in a forced fake way, in a way that we really believe, because we know Cesaro can pick up a guy like Big Show. It really, and everybody thought Big Show was going to win to honor Andre, but really what happened was he played Andre the Giant in that match, and it was very unexpected. A great kickoff match with the Usos, Bray Wyatt showing that there is, that storytelling is alive and well in professional wrestling. There were historic moments made last night, and so where this ranks, I don't know that I could say that yet, but last night was a truly memorable night. And I think in a couple of years, we're going to be looking back on this WrestleMania, and we are going to say that it ranks up there with one of the best of all time, with the WrestleMania 17 and 18, Hogan versus The Rock, WrestleMania 3, WrestleMania 6. I think we're really going to put it in that, in that light and on that pedestal, because it really created those memories.
Certainly had a lot of people talking, and obviously makes tonight very interesting for Raw, just an hour away. Take a couple of phone calls before we wrap up and get out of here. Caller, you're live on The Voice of Wrestling. What's your name? Where are you from?
My name's Mike. I'm from Utica, New York.
What's up, man?
I was reading a report that said that the Battle Royal, there was 31 participants instead of 30. Is that true?
Yeah, Nick, we were just talking about that earlier. Absolutely.
I didn't know that.
Very interesting.
So how did that screw up one? Who wasn't supposed to be in it?
I don't really know. I don't know what they were doing. I mean, Rusev wasn't in there. Cesaro was never announced, and he was put in there. And Rusev was announced, I believe, and wasn't in there. And they still ended up
was not there.
Ended up with 31 instead of 30. I'm sure they just kind of felt like they could sneak that by. Of course, they knew most likely the internet was going to catch it. Yeah. Somebody was going to catch it, but they also realized that nobody was going to care at the end of the day if 31's in there instead of 30. So for me, it was kind of a non-point, but I didn't know that until Nick mentioned it today. So very interesting, but congrats to Cesaro, which, by the way, my cousin David, tuning into tonight's show, had texted me right before that phone call wanting us to talk about Cesaro actually and his big win last night, which we've talked about at in depth. His surgery went, by the way. Thank you to everybody that went and watched the YouTube video of me and him. We're going to be back tomorrow night on voiceofwrestling.com and on Voice of Wrestling's YouTube channel with two cousins talking wrestling. His surgery went awesome. Thanks for all the good get well wishes and everything. He got to read all of those. It was very overwhelming, but his surgery went as good as as expected. And David, glad to have you on board. Let's take another quick phone call. Caller, you're live on VLW. What's on your mind?
Hey man, how you doing today?
Doing good, man.
Hey, I have a quick question about the Shield. What do you think about the match? Was so short. I mean, don't you feel like it was underwhelming that the Shield is such a great team, and they didn't use them right at WrestleMania?
No, I appreciate the call. And see, I think that's the one thing we really didn't address, Nick, and I am curious to your thoughts. I don't see it as them not using them right. I think they were making up for time. I think at the end of the day, that was a good match to do it. And Kane and the New Age Outlaws, who, again, I mentioned earlier, I believe are going to be written off TV, if not after last night completely or very, very soon. it was just a good way to get these guys over as good as you could. Give them their big power spots. Give them a quick match, a very dominant match, because nobody gains anything really with Kane and them going the distance. I think that it was make up for time. Like I said, the intro went very, very long. It was a long match opener. And so for me, that's the reason they did it. They probably cut off 10 minutes on that match, Nick. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if they did because of the way the intros and everything went in the opening match. So to me, that was the reason they did it. I don't look at it as really being that big of a deal, though. It was a very dominant performance. I thought the Shield looked great. I thought it went okay. It was kind of a sloppy match in a lot of ways, but for me, it did what it needed, and I didn't mind it.
Yeah, you could kind of tell from the onset of the match, it was just sort of a flurry of offense. You kind of saw this thing wrapping up quickly, but really, where was it going to go? This match was thrown, the
whole thing
the
was
amount
thrown
of
together.
time they spent on the match was indicative of the amount of time they spent putting the match together and building toward it. It was thrown together. I don't think a lot of people really expected much by way of storytelling here. They've obviously made this decision to sort of turn around what they had been doing with
and that's
the
what I was
Shield.
going to say. I think last night
teasing that. Teasing that.
No, I was just going to say last night seems indicative to me that they're going to keep them together. I think that's if there's a story that was told last night in that match, which there wasn't much of one as far as the actual match it goes, but what they wanted to drive home was a powerful performance by the Shield and notification, basically, that these guys are going to stick around together for at least the next little while. I think that's what we got.
And if this was done entirely to erase all that stuff we were doing before when we were teasing them breaking up. My hope though here is that I don't want these guys to become pussy baby faces. WWE makes a huge mistake time and time again. Sheamus is the biggest example. Here's a guy that comes in as a monster heel. He's got a unique look. He's big. He's strong. He's killing guys. And then one day they turn him into a big, white, funny softy, who's making jokes and it just doesn't work. These guys, the Shield, they came in as anti-establishment. They were the hounds of justice, but, the irony there is that they weren't actually providing justice. It was, they were doing all of Triple H's evil bidding. I'm not suggesting that they still have to continue doing that, but they have to still have that edge. They have to be that group that doesn't care. They're not out to please anybody. They're not out to be friends. We already know that they're going to be booked in matches where they're going to be teaming up with John Cena at live events, at least for the next couple of months. They're going to be teaming up with him at the Saudi Arabia tour that's happening in a couple of weeks. So, here's to hoping we don't see too many moments on Raw where Roman Reigns and John Cena are hugging it out. That's not what the Shield was. That's not what the Shield is. That's not what got the Shield over. That's not what people liked about the Shield. The Shield were 3 Stone Cold Steve Austins that worked as a group to take everybody else down. And Stone Cold, he reminded you last night in the beginning of the show when he was standing there with Hogan. He said, now normally when I would come out here and you were standing in my ring, I'd open a can of whoop ass. And that's what the Shield did, and that's what the Shield needs to continue to do. So I hope they don't pussy these guys up too much. I don't see it yet, but it's a dangerous territory that WWE has a bad habit of always going down once they try to turn these guys.
And I feel like that's something also WWE needs to work on. All these new faces and stuff that are getting over, they're supposed to be heels. I mean, and the Shield was one of those. The Wyatts are obviously getting over in some ways. And I feel like for WWE at this point to have good baby faces versus good heels as much as they can, I almost feel like the guys like Batista and Randy Orton and John Cena are all, in the fans' eyes, are going to consistently be that. And WWE needs to find a way to challenge that. They need to find a way to be able to get who they want over as some of these new guys over as heels. A guy like Bray Wyatt should be a heel, but he's so likable with the internet and the hardcore fans, and I feel like that's becoming a very powerful group more and more. I think more fans are smarter. More fans are kind of looking for different things in their wrestling. And so the Shield's babyface turn is interesting. I'm 100% with you. They don't need to change their character too much. They're already getting over for what they are. And I also want to just say this in closing. I hope we get the Wyatts in the Shield. Not that the Shield's not breaking out or breaking up. I hope we get that again at some point. Two dominant groups that fans care about or invested in. I think that will be great because it was already money once for a very short time. It can be money again. Guys, thanks for the phone call. Sorry we didn't get to more of those. I know a couple of you called. I was going to take your call, but we are running over. Guys, really appreciate you tuning into the Voice of Wrestling. Such a big night last night. I expect a big show tonight as well with Raw. More on The Undertaker, obviously, in coming weeks. Nick and I will have plenty to discuss next week as far as now, as I forgot who it was that I saw this on, the 5 things to watch Raw for tonight or whatever that video was that WWE put out. Something along the lines of WrestleMania basically being kind of that the close to one chapter and opening of another, essentially, and that is oftentimes what the next night is on Raw. And so it will be interesting to see what they want to create with tonight and what they're going to continue on with going into, kind of this next season, so to speak. The season premiere that is tonight's Raw. And immediately following, don't forget, myself, I might be on there, Doug McDonald from Wrestling Rumors, Frank Manzo's going to call in with Wrestle Reaction immediately following the show on WrestleZone.com and, of course, WrestleReaction.net. Check out voiceofwrestling.com. A lot of changes going there. And as always, continue support for WrestleZone.com, the absolute best wrestling news site online. And Nick, I enjoyed it, my man. Enjoy Raw tonight. And we will see each other, see you next week right here on The Voice of Wrestling. Hopefully back to our normal time at 6:30 Eastern. You're going to have to just come up with something different. But David.
If I wear like a padded glove or something.
Yeah. By the way, a lot of new listeners that tuned in tonight. Thank you very much. Some headgear.
Maybe I wear headgear.
Thanks for tuning in. Hopefully you'll be a mainstay. Come back, maybe. We're here every Monday, so join us. And for Nick Paglino, I am Chris Cash. This is The Voice of Wrestling. Until next time, enjoy wrestling, everyone. We'll see you then.
You are now tuned in to the world's greatest. Tonight is the night. Bright lights, high crowd. Yeah, we leave the throw down. Everybody get loud.